Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. One of the sure traditions of summer is the annual Kansas FFA convention that just wrapped up. We'll talk with Sage Taves from Canton. She's a freshman at Kansas State University and wrapping up her year as the state reporter. We'll also have features from Kansas Corn, Kansas Wheat, and the Kansas Farm Bureau, plus the weekly update from the Kansas Livestock Association and market information from Pinion.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat. Online at kswheat.com.
In ag information, the combined weight of drought, low commodity prices, and high input cost brought net income down in 2023 among farms listed in the Kansas Farm Management Association database. Their executive director, Mark Dykman, said 2023 net income among the 823 Kansas farm studies fell to $98,299, nearly $80,000 less than last year of 2022. He said drought is the story of the year. Drought had a significant impact in 2022, continued for much of the state in 2023. Below average yields combined with depressed prices relative to the 2022 drove incomes down. Crop producers felt the blunt of the higher input costs, particularly with seed and fertilizer. Even though fertilizer's come down from its peak in 22, it's increased nearly $34 an acre since 2019. For some crops like corn, milo, and sorghum, the 2023 yields across Kansas were even or slightly up compared to 2022, though for lower historical averages. But Dykman said producers didn't get a bump in income because the grain prices were down in 2023. He said the beef sector shouldered a greater load of profitability in 23, accounting for nearly 23% of the value of farm production, which Dykman said is the measure of gross revenue on KFMA farms in 2023 compared to 16% in 2022. Meanwhile, government assistance like crop insurance particularly, a key in keeping many farmers in business. Dykman said net crop insurance as a measure of payments minus the premiums the farmer paid was nearly $82,500, the average of $98,229 of net income in the state. Soybean gall midge is a new pest to soybean production in the U.S., been found now in 2 northeast Kansas counties. K-State entomologist Dr. Anthony Zukov said the pest causes devastation to fields. Said after several years of Nebraska counties on the Kansas border having infestations, soybean gall midge finally did show up in northeast Kansas, Nemaha, and Marshall counties last year. The tiny flies lay their eggs in soybean fields and then bring them to plants by feeding on their systems, according to Zukov. Those maggots consume tissue inside the stems of the plants and then leads to severe lodging. That means the plants will be falling over and then outright plant death. Lodging and plant death can give rise to fields having considerably poor yields at harvest. From the field's edge, which is usually infestations typically start, to about 100 feet into the field, you could have complete yield loss, he says. Beyond that, at 300 to 400 feet, you could look at about a 20% yield loss. Now, to detect soybean gall midge, Zukov encourages producers to scout their fields for wilting soybean plants. He said, if you do see some maggots, especially if they're bright orange, report the soybean gall midge appearance to professionals at your local county extension office or by contacting the K-State Entomology Department. Soybean gall midge possesses unique physical characteristics, making them easily identifiable. And the U.S. Meat Export Federation finished its spring conference in Kansas City recently with a closing session focused on the red meat industry's efforts to build international demand for beef and pork cuts with limited domestic use. Jessica Spritzer, the USMEF Director for Trade Analysis, highlighted the marketing efforts, showcasing the attributes of underutilized U.S. cuts. She talked about the strategies USMEF uses to develop demand for cuts, specifically the pork loin and beef round primals, pointing to estimates that loin exports now account for about 20% of U.S. production, up from just 10% 5 years ago. On export demand, found underutilized beef cuts noted that export markets for 42% of the total U.S. production of the gooseneck round, 30% of the chuck shoulder claw, and 18% of the top inside round. The export side of adding pricing competition, potential customers, that all brings added value to the underutilized cuts, she said. We'll take a break and be back and talk Kansas FFA when we return on the Kansas Ag Report.
The Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com.
And we're joined by Sage Taves, who is the Kansas FFA state reporter. She is from Canton. Sage, thanks for joining us.
Yes, you bet. I'm excited.
We have caught you right at the beginning of the state FFA convention. So as this is airing, it is now over. But we wanted to talk about as the Blue Jackets invade Manhattan every year. It's an exciting time. It's probably not only exciting time for you, but also one to look at relief, but also a time to celebrate with you and your other fellow FFA members.
Yes, you bet. Convention is undoubtedly an excited time. We've got close enough that chapters are starting to roll into Manhattan. I think Manhattan's seeing more transit vans and school Suburbans than it probably has since last year at state convention. Several service workers around town are beginning to recognize the Blue Jacket. They know what time of year it is. They're getting excited to have young people filling the streets of Manhattan. And even more so, we're excited to have young people fill McCain Auditorium for our sessions where we'll celebrate FFA members, like you mentioned, and their accomplishments and proficiencies, leadership development events, career development events, and even just other experiences they take part in as FFA members this year. So the excitement is certainly built, and we're excited to hit the gavel tonight for session 1.
Well, as it gets underway, I think one of the neat things about this is to watch young folks starting out in high school and then working their way now to maybe the culmination of a state officer like you and some of your fellow team members. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But your speeches, your retiring speeches, those have been ones that have always been inspiring, and everybody has such a story to tell. And maybe you might just share just a little bit about maybe what you're going to share.
Yes, you bet. So like you mentioned, each year as state officers, we have the opportunity to give a retiring address, and I'm incredibly excited. I'll give mine tomorrow in session 3, and my retiring address is titled Fierce Steps. And really, I'm just challenging FFA members to leverage the fierce intensity that so many of us bring to contests and connecting with people. I think so often we get caught up in the perfect words when we look to connect, but really more than anything, there's acts of service we can do to serve people greater than just having the perfect words or being at the right place, the right time. So that's really my challenge to FFA members, is to take fierce steps towards supporting others.
We're talking with Sage Taves, who is one of the state officers. She's the state reporter with the Kansas FFA. Their annual meeting took place last week in Manhattan. We caught up with her right as things were getting underway. We're going to take a break and learn more about Sage and her experience in FFA. We'll do that in just a moment.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com.
And our guest is Sage Taves. She is from Canton, and she is the outgoing reporter for the Kansas FFA as their annual meeting just wrapped up in Manhattan. And as we get a chance to talk with you, we want to focus a little bit on you and maybe your journey to get to where you are today, starting out in Canton and now to a state officer and a student at Kansas State University.
Mhm. Yeah, you bet. Well, my FFA experience started a little different than most people's because Canton Galva didn't previously have an FFA chapter. So when a chapter is chartered, you have the opportunity to sign an actual paper charter, just like they did when they were establishing, the first several chapters. And we were chartered as a chapter my freshman year. So I take great pride in have been able to be one of the members who signed that initial chapter charter. And really, my FFA experience flourished because I had a great ag teacher and I was willing to say yes. And I think that's so much of the FFA is there's opportunities out there for everyone, and it's a really diverse organization in our opportunities, but we have to have the willingness to say yes. And lucky for me, I had an ag teacher that challenged me to say yes often. And because of that, really just dived in step by step. First, it was contests, then a chapter office, district office, and now finally I've had the opportunity to serve Kansas FFA as a state officer this past year.
And you also had many opportunities to go to Topeka, go to other places and meet with other state officer teams. And you have a couple of takeaways that you will use in your experience moving forward now?
Yes, you bet. We did have some really unique travel opportunities. I think one that stands out in uniqueness is 4 of my teammates, including myself, traveled to Australia this last January. And I think one standout from Australia for me was that there's great pride in being in agriculture everywhere. I think maybe growing up, I could have been caught saying, well, my dad just works in agriculture, but there's really nothing just about providing food, fuel, and fiber for our world. And it was really cool to go to Australia and hear them echo the great pride of being in agriculture. Everyone was really proud to share what they were doing and how they were providing for not only just their country and continent, but also even the connection between Australian agriculture combined with the United States. Another key takeaway took place in DC, which was an incredible experience. We traveled to DC for the State Officers Summit, and you get state officers from all 50 states in one room, and things get a little chaotic, but the room nearly silenced when the speaker or the House Ag Committee chair walked in, and his first words in the microphone as he looked out over the sea of the Blue Jackets were, "Wow, what a force for good." And that line, "force for good," really echoes all the FFA is, because as I've traveled to banquets across this spring, I've noticed FFA is a force for good, not just in my life, my 5 teammates' lives, but almost 13,500 FFA members' lives.
Well, Sage, you are a very bright spot in the future for Kansas agriculture, and so we wish you well. Now, Kansas FFA also is alive and very strong. How many members?
13,500. It's funny, I write some notes in my jacket just as reminders every time I put it on. In my first jacket, my first said nearly 13,000. My last jacket says over 13,500. So we're celebrating incredible growth.
Sounds great. Well, Sage, we look forward to following your path of how you go, and we appreciate your service already. And we wish you and your fellow FFA members nothing but success. So thank you for spending some time with us.
Yes, you bet. Thank you very much.
Sage Taves, who is from Canton Galva, and is the retiring reporter for the Kansas FFA. She's joined us here today. We'll take a break and come back with more in just a moment.
Anything I can help you locate today?
Yeah, I'm looking for some grass seed, but I can never figure out which type to buy.
At Premier Farm at Home, you can pick your grass seed out of a field instead of off a shelf.
Really? You can do that?
At Premier, you can.
That'd be great.
Let me take you to our plots.
Everyone has lawn problems. At Premier Farm and Home, we see it as an opportunity to earn your trust.
This is so helpful.
Only place in the Midwest.
With each problem we help you solve, you'll gain confidence and find that no one can take care of your lawn like you can.
Hi, I'm Bill Johnston with Kansas Corn. Did you realize that every drop of water that's on Earth has been here since the beginning of Earth? Yeah, it may change forms, from rain to snow and ice, and it can change locations, like rain that falls in a field may run off to a stream and into a river, but it's still here on Earth, or in its atmosphere. You see, the water that's here, It's not like it came from outer space. It's not like there's any place here on Earth that is a factory that's producing water. It's already here, and it's been here for a long time. You see, it's called the water cycle. And while there's 4 steps to the water cycle, let's start with precipitation. Precipitation is water falling from the clouds to the earth. That water could be rain, it could be snow or sleet, but it's going to fall to the earth. A lot of it's going to land on bodies of water. That lands on the land, it's going to begin to soak in. We call it infiltration and percolation. Some of that's going to be soaked in and going to be absorbed by plants, or it might run off of that land into a stream. All of that water that lands here on the earth, whether it's on a body of water or on the land, will immediately, some of it will start to evaporate, which is changing from a liquid to a gas. See, in evaporation, when that water heats up, starts turning into tiny little particles that are so small they begin to float up into the sky. That brings us to the next stage, which is condensation. See, as those tiny particles float, the higher they get, the cooler they get. And as they cool off, they begin to connect to other particles. And as more and more of those connect, they form clouds. And they begin to connect more and more and more.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
Butler County Farm Bureau is the County Innovation Award winner in education. The county's event, Charcuterie with Chefs, focused on educating chefs in training at the Butler Community College Redler Culinary Institute about local foods, connecting them with farmers and ranchers and fostering an appreciation for the challenges faced by agricultural producers. In addition, the event aimed to promote culinary education, connect consumers with producers, and support Butler County Farm Bureau's Ag in the Classroom program, all while subtly introducing attendees to the mission and benefits of Kansas Farm Bureau. By utilizing the Culinary Institute and offering a class in charcuterie board preparation with local chefs, the county successfully attracted a different sector of the community, particularly those interested in the local farm-to-table movement. The inclusion of producers and the involvement of a local brewery and winery added layers of education and entertainment. The creative integration of agriculture in the culinary experience created a positive impact on consumers and potential associate members, further reinforcing the value of local producers. Congratulations to Butler County Farm Bureau for their efforts in reaching more educators, ultimately benefiting the next generation of chefs and ensuring they appreciate the hard work of Kansas farmers and ranchers.
What does a brighter, more sustainable future look like in our cities and towns, and how do we get there? When New York needed an alternative fuel source to reduce carbon emissions, the city found what it needed in biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
Whether you are looking to catch up on the latest in the wheat industry, hear stories of Kansas wheat farming families, or explore the larger world of wheat, the Wheats on Your Mind podcast has content for you. Hosted by Aaron Harries, Kansas Wheat Vice President of Research and Operations, the bi-weekly broadcast discusses wheat research projects, the latest in the domestic and global wheat markets, policy news like tracking the upcoming Farm Bill, wheat crop conditions, management decisions, and more. Wheats on Your Mind is meant to be both educational and entertaining. Showcasing the stories and people in the wheat world, Harry said, we want to reach millers to consumers and everyone in between, so tune in today. 2 recent episodes walk through the importance of good communication strategy in promoting the U.S. wheat industry, whether by using analytics to better target consumers or by connecting Brazilian and American farmers. Kansas Wheat promotes individual episodes on the organization's social media channels, but listeners should subscribe so they don't miss any of the excitement. Listeners can tune in wherever they listen to podcasts, including Apple or Spotify. Or check out the podcast's website at wheatsonyourmind.com.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Applications for the 2024 Kansas Leopold Conservation Award are due June 1st. Landowners are encouraged to nominate themselves, or applications may be submitted on behalf of a landowner. To apply, go to ranchlandtrustofkansas.org and click on Events and News. Given in honor of renowned conservationist Aldo Leopold, the $10,000 award recognizes and celebrates extraordinary achievement in voluntary conservation by agricultural landowners. In Kansas, the award is presented by the Ranchland Trust of Kansas, Sand County Foundation, Kansas Association of Conservation Districts, and American Farmland Trust. Barth Crouch, Ranchland Trust of Kansas Board Chairman, said it is RTK's honor and privilege to help recognize Kansas ranchers and farmers who go above and beyond the standard in stewardship of the natural resources they manage daily. Applications will be reviewed by an independent panel of Kansas agricultural and conservation leaders. The 2024 award will be presented in November at the Kansas Association of Conservation Districts Annual Convention. The Kansas Leopold Conservation Award is made possible thanks to the Farm Credit Associations of Kansas, ITC Great Plains, Kansas Department of Agriculture Division of Conservation, Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, Kansas Forest Service, McDonald's, the Nature Conservancy in Kansas, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, Green Cover Seed, and a Kansas Leopold Conservation Award recipient.
More farmers and ranchers than ever have chosen to be BQA certified.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
This week's market has shown plenty of volatility as the trade digests multiple storylines and different rounds of information. For U.S. growers, planting pace has been at the top of everyone's mind as we continue to go through an unusually wet spring across the country. Still, Monday's crop condition report showed that we are right at the 5-year average for getting the crop in the ground. Corn planted stood at 83% versus an 82% average. Soybeans were at 68% versus 63% average, and spring wheat came in at 88% versus an 81% 5-year average. Wheat conditions on the same report lost a point from last week's measure, coming in at 49% good or excellent, well above last year's 34% mark, as well as a 5-year average of 45% good to excellent. The corn market continues to seem satisfied with this year's production potential, though we are far too early to know yield or even final acre estimates for sure. Ethanol demand continues to be strong, as Thursday's report showed an average of 1.068 million barrels per day produced, which is 4.8% higher than last week and 6.4% higher than last year, with ethanol stocks being reduced to 23.207 million barrels from 24.212 last week. Soybeans continue on in a range trade as we monitor reports out of Brazil to see just what effect the flooding there has caused, though at the moment it does not seem to be too catastrophic. By far the biggest story in the grain sector at the moment is production troubles in the Black Sea region, as Russian and Ukrainian farmers report frost damage and dry weather that may rapidly decrease this year's crop. June is a critical month for their wheat potential, so all eyes will be on the forecast for that area in order to see how that progresses. Cattle markets this week are digesting a cattle on feed report that came largely as expected last Friday. It showed that as of May 1st, cattle on feed numbers are at 99.1% of last year, placements are at 94.2%, and marketing's coming in at 110.1%. In outside markets, the dollar and crude oil remain in a strong trading range, the dollar sticking around 104 to 105, and crude between $78 to $80 per barrel. If you have any questions or would like to get started on your marketing plan before it's too late, feel free to give us a call at 888-452-8751. I'm Jake McCall with Pinion Risk Management, and I hope you have a great day.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
Well, that'll do it for our program this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Be social with us online, kansasagreport.net, or our social media channels. We have hit summertime, almost 1st of June. We'll be back with you another program next week here on the Kansas Ag Report. Thanks for watching.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and Liberty Link that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
Imagine turning soybean oil, used cooking oils, and waste animal fats into fuel so amazing it drives U.S. jobs and our economy forward. Learn more about biodiesel at americasadvancedbiofuel.com.